Hi, for our math lesson today, we are going to be working with rounding. And rounding numbers is when you make them into easier numbers. And so they're easier to add for addition. It's a strategy for addition. So I wanted to go over the learning target for us today. Learning target is I can round numbers to the nearest 10 and 100. Okay, that's what we're going to focus on today. And our success criteria, I will know I am successful when I can round numbers accurately to the nearest 10 and 100. All right, so that's going to be our focus today. So when I say the word rounding, when we're going to be rounding numbers, what we're doing is we're making easier numbers. So they're easier to add. So for instance, if I had an addition problem like this, 13 plus 14, the top of my head, I don't know that answer right away. They're not very friendly. This number ends in 3 and this number ends in 4. Those aren't friendly numbers. We want to get them to either zeros or 5s are going to be more friendly to work with. They're easier to add in our head, mental math, okay? So if I were to round this number, it's closest to 10. This number 14 is also closest to 10. So if I were to round these numbers to closest tens place, we would round it to 10 and 10. So I know right off the bat, those are friendly, easy numbers. Mental math, 10 plus 10 is 20. Okay, so if I were really to add these two numbers up, let's see if we were close to that estimation of 20. Not too bad. 27 is pretty close to 20. So rounding numbers is an easy way to do addition. It's not completely accurate. It's an estimation. So estimating is a good guess. Okay? So let's take a number, for instance. We're going to round to the nearest tens place. Okay? So if I have the number 25, the way that I am going to figure out how I can round that number either up or down is I look at the target place value, okay? So if I said the tens place and the ones place, and we want to round to the nearest tens place, that is my target place value. Now I'm going to go next door and peer in next door, and this number here, next door to the one I'm concerned about, I'm going to ask myself, is that 5 or higher or 4 or lower? So this number is obviously 5, so it's 5 or higher. We're going to round up because 25 is closer to the next 10, which is 30, than it is to the nearest lower 10, which is 20. It's halfway there. 25 is halfway between 20, this 10, and this 10, 30. It's right in the middle, isn't it? Okay? So let's try another number. And right before we do that, I want to just review place value. So when we talk about place value, numbers have their place and value, okay? So if we start from the left, we have the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, and the thousands place, okay? So for instance, this number here, 3,452, is really saying that we have 3 thousands, 4 hundreds, 5 tens, which is also 50, and 2 ones, which is also just 2. So remember, with place value, if it's in the thousands place and it's a number 3, it's kind of like saying 3 sets of 1,000. So 3 times 1,000 is 1,000, 3,000. And over here, the 4 in the hundreds place is really like saying 4 times 100. 4 sets of 100 is 400. And if we're in the tens place and we have a 5, it's really like we're saying 5 sets of 10, or 5 times 10, which is 50, because there are 5 tens in the tens place. And ones, we just have 2 times 1. One set of 2 or 2 sets of 1 is 2. Okay, so this is the expanded version of this number. 3,452. We could read it up here the same way, 3,452. Okay, so that's a reminder of place value. It's really important when you're rounding numbers. So let's take another number which is close to this one we just did. So let's do 23 now. So if we're going to round it to the nearest tens, the nearest 10, 23 is in between 20 and 30 because they're the nearest tens place, okay? So I'm going to look at the number in the place value, that's the target. So if we're saying tens place, we want to look at the tens place because that's the one that's going to change. It's either going to round up to 3 or stay the same, round down to 20. So we look at the next number and we ask ourselves, is it 5 or higher? Because at 5, it's midway between 20 and 30. So if it's 5 and higher, it's closer to 30. If it's 4 and lower, it's closer to 20. So which one is it? 5 and higher or 4 and lower? Is it closer to 20 or is it closer to 30? Right, it's closer to 20 because it's below 5. This number here in the ones place is lower than 5. So we're going to round down, which is kind of like staying at the 20. And this zeroes out. So this would be our answer if we were rounding this number, 23, to the nearest 10. The nearest 10 is 20. Let's do one more. Let's try, how about 46? We want to round 46 to the nearest tens place. So what's the first thing we do? We look at the tens place, which is right here. This is the ones place, this is the tens place. So this is the target place we're going to look at because we're either going to round it up or round it down. So 46 is between which two tens? Okay, 40 and 50. It's right in the middle, like if there was a number line here. 46 would be between 40 and 50 on the number line. So our little trick is we look at the ones place and we ask ourselves if it's 5 or higher, that means it's closer to 50. We will round up to 50. If this number is 4 or lower, we will round down to 40. So what do you think? Closer to 50, closer to 40. Right, this one's closer to 50 because in the ones place, it's 5 or higher, it's a 6. So it's inching closer towards 50. So if we were to round this number, 46, we would round it up to 50. This would be the rounded number for 46 to the nearest tens place. Okay? So we have a couple of worksheets to do. And I'm going to show you what they're going to look like inside of Empower. So I've uploaded these into Empower, okay? And flip this over, I'll use it like this. It says rounding to the nearest 10. So we've got lots of numbers and you're going to use that technique to round it to the nearest 10. If you want to write the two tens that are on either side of the number, so if this is 34, what is 34 between? If we're looking at the tens place, it's between 30 and 40, okay? So use that little trick. We look at the tens place because we're rounding to the nearest tens. And you look at the ones place and you ask yourself, if it's 5 or higher, it's closer to 40. But if this number is 4 or lower, it's actually closer to 30. So which is it, 34? Is it closer to 40 or 30? It's actually closer to 30. So I would write 30 on the line and circle it. But you cannot write on these worksheets. So what you have to do is you can write it on a notebook, but then you transfer your answers into a Google Doc that's attached in your Empower. And And I've got it all set up there so that you can type in your answers. Okay? So you're going to round all of this to the nearest 10 on this page. Okay? The next one is rounding to the nearest hundredths. So rounding to the nearest hundredths is the same principle, except now our target place value is going to be the hundreds place. Okay, so it's the same procedure, but now we've just got to remember that we're rounding to the hundreds place. Okay, and I want you to just remember the place value. So we had ones, tens, now we're taking it to the hundreds place. So now we're going to be dealing with 3-digit numbers. Okay, so that's our reminder. We're doing the hundreds place now. So if I had a number like 346 and I want to round it to the nearest hundreds, well, this number is right between which hundreds? On this side, it's going to be between 300 and 400. Okay, because we're rounding to the nearest hundreds now. You've got to have 3 place values now for this one. But it's the same principle. So our target place value for hundreds is going to be which one? Right, this is the hundreds place, right? 100, tens, ones. So if we're rounding to the nearest hundreds, we're going to look at the next place value over to the right. Now this one, same thing. If it's 5 or higher, it's going to be closer to 400 because that means it's 350, which is midway. 350 is halfway between 300 and 400. So if we're at 350, we're closer to 400 and we're going to round up. Okay? But if it's 4 or lower, it's going to be closer to 300. And we will round down. So what do you think? This place is 5 or higher, go to 400, or 4 or lower, go to 300. Right, go down to 300. Because this number was lower than 5, it was 4 or lower. So this whole number here, 346, would round down to 300. Okay, so it's the same principle as before. Hundreds place, you look at the target hundreds place value. You look next door and see if that number is 5 or higher. That bumps you up until the next hundreds place. If it's 4 or lower, you go back down to this. So what I would do is I would write these numbers out so that you can see that your number is between 300 and 400. Okay? So use your scratch paper. We sent home those notebooks for math. Use all of that up and then type your final answers into the Google Doc. So the next worksheet looks like this, very similar, but now this one is going to be to the nearest hundreds place, and we know our place value. So the nearest 100 is this place value here. You see? Oops, this one doesn't have it, but this one has 100, okay? So for instance, if we were to do this one, this is 264 is between which 200s on either side of it? 200 and 300, okay? So we look at this place value next to the hundreds place, and we say, is it 5 or higher? We'll bump it up to 300. Or if it's 4 or lower, we'll stay down here at 200. Because 250 is right in the middle between 200 and 300. So what is this? Higher than 5? It is. So this will round up to 300. So this whole number here rounds up to 300. Okay? So finish the worksheet, do it on scratch paper in your math notebook, and then enter your final answers into the Google Doc. The last worksheet's kind of fun, and it's practicing both tens place and hundreds place. But mostly hundreds place now that I look at it. So it's just robot ones. And the robots all have numbers, and you get to choose which hundreds place or thousands it even went up to. It rounds to. And then you can type your answers in the Google Doc. All right, any questions, email me, or you can email me and ask me to do a hangout. All right, good luck. Thank you so much.